Hi, my name is Rich Trouton, and thank you for joining me for my talk on Ride on the Release Train, which is about providing software to your users with superior user experience and minimal drama. Before we get started, there's two things I'd like to mention. The first is that all the slides, speakers, notes, and the demos are available for download, and I'll be providing a link at the end of the talk. I tend to be one of those folks who can't keep up with the speaker and take notes at the same time. So for those folks in the same situation, there is no need to take notes. Everything I'm covering is going to be available for download. The second is to please hold all questions till the end. If you've got questions, make a note of them and hit me at the end of the talk in Discord. With luck, I'll be able to answer most of your questions during the talk itself. So, how do software requests work in most shops? In yours, is it something like this? What about security software? Is it something like this? Now, this usually leads to some more questions. And sometimes there's some really important questions which need to be answered. And in such circumstances, without a lot of care and work on your part, your fleet's user experience may begin to experience some technical difficulties. So how do we handle it? Well, we decided to climb aboard a train, specifically our release train. What is that? So this is the 1,000-meter view. Every release train involves planning out which applications are going to be covered, packaging them, testing them, validating through a Q&A process, releasing them, and then letting folks know what we did. Now, this is a process based on Agile, and we run the previously described process within 2-week sprints. Once a sprint is completed, assuming all has gone well, our apps are deployed and the cycle starts again. And we also stagger our deployments just in case something got past our testing and QA processes. We start out with group 1, which is 1% of our fleet, and we see if any problems crop up. If not, we proceed to group 2, and again, look for issues now that we're deploying to a larger group of Macs. And this process continues until all groups are being deployed to. So on the work level, we've got the following categories. We have our scheduled tasks and we have our emergency bug fixes. Scheduled tasks are what are submitted through the normal 2-week sprint process, which we'll be talking more about later. And emergency bug fixes are tasks which must be resolved as quickly as possible. An EBF is structured the same as a scheduled task, but QA, testing, and deployment are expedited so that the fix is deployed as soon as possible. Now, on the people level, we've got the following categories. We have our coordinator, the app owners, the folks who support the release train process, and the QA process. Now, first up is our coordinator, who is our Scrum Master in the Agile context. As with the Scrum Master role, the release train coordinator handles most of the communication between the app owners and the release train support folks. They make sure that the app owners and support folks have an obstacle-free process, and they're also charged with ensuring that the release train process is an effective and efficient process which stays on schedule. Next up are our app owners, who are largely coming from outside the Mac at SAP team. Now, these are the folks who are responsible for a specific application or set of applications. Their responsibilities include submitting new versions of the app to the release train process, making sure that the app is properly licensed, submitting test plans for that app, and most crucially, they are responsible for testing that app using their test plan. Now, these responsibilities ensure that the app owner has a vested interest in the app both deploying and working properly. If it does not, the app is pulled from deployment, and the app owner has to answer for why this occurred. However, the app owners are not responsible for developing deployment solutions or figuring out how to deliver settings for their apps. These are handled by the release train support folks, which we'll be talking about next. Release train support folks handle a lot of the moving parts. So they're in charge of taking the requests submitted by the app owner and turning them into what the app owner wants. Now, this may involve building packages, writing or updating scripts, or creating new management profiles. So the support folks also handle the post-sprint deployment. So in this case, the app owner will have specified if they want an app pushed out and to which Macs, or if they want to make it available for the users to do their own installs using our self-service tools. The release train QA is responsible for our automated testing, which is separate from the testing done by the app owners. QA in this case is running a set of automated tests based on the test plan submitted by the app owners and verifying if the tests pass or fail. And I'll be talking more about the tools that we use for this shortly. Last but not least, there are our volunteer testers. These folks are anyone in the company who wants to get access to the bleeding edge with the understanding that the bleeding edge does occasionally cut you. So to join our volunteer pool at SAP, there is an Exchange distribution list that includes the option of self-service joining. Join the list, and you're now a tester. Want to stop? Well, remove yourself from that distribution list. So with regards to tools, there are several layers of tools that we're using. For communication between the app owners and the release train staff, we're using primarily Microsoft Teams and Microsoft Planner, though some communication between the release train support folks and the release train coordinator also occurs in Slack. To build the profiles, packages, and scripts, the release train support staff uses a number of tools. Auto package is leveraged wherever possible to build packages, but a small number of installers are built using the Packages app. So one of the rules we follow are that the packages used in release train must be signed. So to support this when manually building packages, we leverage Packages' ability to sign installers. Now when building using auto package, we leverage an auto package processor named Package Signer, and we use what's called a .sign auto package recipe. Now this type of recipe, the .sign recipe, was developed by my teammate Jeremy Reichman, and it's designed to use a .package recipe as a parent recipe to first build a package and then use the .sign recipe to sign it. Now the .sign recipe can in turn be used as a parent recipe by a .jss recipe for JSS importer, a .monkey recipe for monkey, or other recipes used to upload an installer package to a deployment tool. Now, for those interested, I have an example recipe available via a link at the bottom of the screen. So to help us secure our signing certificates, we're using 2Canoe's new signing manager software. For those not familiar with it, it is a way to centrally host a signing certificate on a server and then make it available via the signing manager client software. For our workflow, we first need to get the fingerprint value from the signing manager client software. In this case, the fingerprint is how the client references back to the developer ID certificate stored remotely on the server. From there, I need to add the fingerprint value into an auto package override where I would normally be referencing a developer ID certificate. After that, the override can be triggered as usual, and auto package will create a correctly signed package. Now for profiles, we're using third-party tools like iMazing's profile editor, or we're handcrafting them using tools like BBEdit. For scripts, we're using BBEdit or a command line text editor like Vim or Nano, and then checking the scripts using shell check or equivalents. As previously mentioned, some release train communication happens in Slack instead of in Teams, and our code review process leverages the Slack channel. In our case, the script author writes it up and then posts it to Slack for comments and testing. Now, once review has taken place, the scriptwriter is then able to post the script for use with the appropriate release train task, and we'll be discussing that in more detail shortly. For our QA tooling, we're using Sakuli to run our automated tests. For those not familiar with it, Sakuli allows you to automate anything you see on the screen of your computer, and I'll be showing Sakuli in action later in the talk. Last but not least, our deployment tool is Jamf Pro. So this is where auto package uploads packages to, and this is where our packages, management profiles, and scripts get deployed from. Now we use this for both our release train testing and also our post-release train deployments. So now that I've talked about the various people and tools involved, let's take a look at how this process works. As one release train cycle ends, another begins. First step is our planning day. The release train coordinator sends out a message every second Wednesday to announce that planning is open and requests that the app owners submit their request. And this communication takes place in a shared Teams channel. This is also where the release train staff requests what they need from the app owners. Now, this is usually something like an installer that can't be obtained via public download from auto package, or documentation on a particular app or setting that is only available to the app owner. Once the planning day is completed, the coordinator sets up tasks in Planner for the release train staff to follow and assigns them to the proper person. So in this instance, we'll be following the path of Fiori Launchpad, which is one of our internal applications. Coordinator also publicly posts information about the current release train cycle to keep our general user population informed. The task specification is defined in the planner task, as is the app owner's desired deployment method. In this case, the app owner has requested that the app be made available for on-demand installation, as well as push the updated app to those folks who already have Fiori Launchpad installed. As part of the task, the assigned support person needs the app owner's assistance to get the app in question. And once provided, the app is fed into our auto package workflow to be packaged, signed, and uploaded to our Jamf Pro server. Once a support person has their task, they begin by setting up the testing workflow. Now, this testing workflow usually takes the form of a policy or profile, which is installed using Jamf Pro self-service. The workflow is set up using a checklist, which defines how to name the policy or profile and how to set up that policy or profile for deployment. On the Jamf Pro end, it looks like this. The policy is named to comply with the release train specific standard, and the new installer is added. The self-service configuration is added with the app's name and version number included as specified in our checklist. The test policy is then scoped according to the checklist instructions. Now, in this case, it's scoped to have all computers as a target, limited to members of our testing group, and to have no exclusions. Once that's done, a visual check is made in self-service to verify that everything looks right. After that, it's back to the task listing so that the test policy is recorded as being ready to go. Here, the DevOps task that the app is packaged and in self-service is checked off, and notes are added to the task so that the app owner is aware of the task status. An email notification is also sent out from Planner to keep all involved in the loop. Once the test policy is ready, the task is assigned back to the coordinator. Along with the previous notification, this makes sure that the coordinator knows that the test setup step is complete. Coordinator then reassigns to the app owner to begin testing. The app owner tests the app or profile in accordance with the submitted test plan. QA also uses this plan to guide their own testing. If all goes well, the task goes back to the coordinator to forward on to Q&A. If not, the coordinator is notified and the release train staff take another look to fix the test workflow's problems. If all has gone well with the app testing by the app owner, the task is then assigned to Q&A to run our automated tests on the app. And as mentioned previously, these tests are run using Sakuli. So let's take a look at an example of an app going through the QA workflow with Sakuli. And in this case, it's going to be Firefox 88. So in this case, the workflow is first going to launch self-service. And because this is limited to a particular AD group, first thing our workflow needs to do is log in as our test user. After that, the next task is locating the correct policy to check, which is Firefox 88, and then installing it. And now that that step has completed, next thing to happen is self-service is quit out and Firefox is launched. Now, in addition to testing to make sure that the app launches properly, the other thing that Sakuli is doing in this case is checking out the settings, which in this case are being read from a profile, to make sure that everything is being read correctly. And once that's all completed, we're going to go ahead and quit out of Firefox. And the next thing we're going to do is relaunch self-service again so that we can test our uninstall process. We go ahead and uninstall, which clears up both Mozilla Firefox and any associated support files along with it. Get the notification that it's been removed from our Mac. And just to make sure it's really gone, next thing we do is go and check an activity monitor to make sure that Firefox is really not running and every trace of it is now gone. And at that point, Sakuli finishes up, and we are done with that round of automated testing. Now, profile testing follows a similar path as app testing, and there's a checklist to follow here as well. So in this case, we're setting up a profile for testing, which sets a search engine named Ecosia as the default for the Google Chrome browser. So it's named and described according to our naming standards, and it's set for installation via self-service. Since the tester should be able to remove the profile once done testing, removal via self-service is also enabled. The self-service configuration is added, with the profile's name and description included as specified in our checklist. As with the apps, the profile is then scoped according to the checklist instructions. In this case, it's scoped to have all computers as a target, limited to members of our testing group, and to have no exclusions. After that, it's back to the task listing so that the profile is recorded as being ready for testing. In self-service, the app owner sees the profile available for installation. They're able to also check the description to make sure it matches what's desired. Once installed, the profile appears in the profile preferences pane along with the others, and the app owner can now check Chrome to make sure that the settings are applying properly. And once installed, self-service will display a remove button to make sure that the tester will be able to remove the profile afterwards. So let's take a look at how this works. So here we're in self-service. The tester is able to check out the description. Everything looks good. So let's go ahead and add that profile. Profile says it's been added. So let's go ahead and check that out. And there's our profile. All right, so now let's make sure that Google Chrome is able to correctly pick it up. So we're going to go ahead and launch Chrome. As we can see, the default search page, at least for the home page, is set correctly because it's coming up with Ecosia. Now let's go ahead and check the search engine settings. And sure enough, search engine used is Ecosia, and it's grayed out to show that it's managed. All right, let's go ahead and quit out Google Chrome. Close out system preferences, and let's remove that profile. All right, it says it's gone. So let's go ahead and just check in system preferences. And sure enough, the Ecosia profile is now removed from the machine. So going back to our Fiori Launchpad app, we discovered that there was a problem with the app during Q&A and needs to go back to the developer for further work. So this application acts as a front end for browser-based applications. So we do have a workaround in the form of a bookmark that we have available in self-service. When folks click on the bookmark, it just launches a web browser and brings up our Fiori Launchpad apps. So this is an example of catching a problem in QA before it hit our users. But what about success? So for that, let's look back to the previous release of Fiori Launchpad. So once a QA app testing completed successfully, the task is then reassigned to the coordinator. From there, the coordinator assigns it back to the task support person for deployment. Deployment options can take many forms, with the most common being the replacement of an existing item, which is now obsolete. As we're setting up the test workflows, deployment workflows use a checklist, which defines how to name the policy or profile and how to set up that policy or profile for deployment. Now, to help make sure that a second set of eyes are validating new workflows, the checklist mandates that when new deployment policies are created, the deploy setting is disabled. Now, the second set of eyes belongs to a validator who is a different release trained support person from the one who is working on this task. Person validating the policy checks it out to make sure that it conforms to the expected standard. And once one of the validators has checked over the workflow, they make a note in the task that they perform their checks. Now, if there are problems, those problems are noted in the task, and the task support person fixes them. If all is well, the workflow moves ahead for general deployment. And once all previous steps have been signed off on as successful, the last step is general deployment. If it's deploying from self-service, the app is made available immediately for installation. Likewise, push deployments are also activated. And if it's a push deployment, the previously discussed deployment groups are used. Each group is set as an exclusion on the Jampro deployment policy, with each exclusion being removed at the proper time. So these push deployments continued until one of the following has occurred. 4 weeks had passed, or the fleet has been entirely upgraded with the new app version, or a newer version of the app is submitted to a future release train. Once the deployments have begun, the coordinator informs the stakeholders for this app that it's successfully deploying and then closes out the task. Now, overall, our release train process has been very successful for both our team and for SAP as a whole. It helps our team very directly in helping us catch problems before deployment, but it also helps the company as a whole because catching these problems before deployment means fewer tickets for our help desk, less wasted time dealing with problems, and a smoother overall user experience for our Mac using colleagues. Now, as of June 2021, we have the following statistics for our user stories, those involved, and our sprints. And that is so far this year. 97 user stories, and this includes our emergency bug fixes and also cancellations. We have 35 app owners. Total staff involved is 106 folks scattered around the company. We've had 10 sprints, and we've had 8 emergency bug fixes. And with that, for those wanting downloads of everything, here is how you get it all. PDF is available via the link on the top, and Keynote slides that include all the slides, all the speakers' notes, all the demos, all the everything is available via the link on the bottom of the screen. With that, thank you for coming, and I'll be in Discord for the next few minutes to answer questions.